Cadet Lisa Reed stood at perfect attention in the training hall of the Galactic Defense Academy. Her 5'7" frame was dwarfed by the 7-foot Taurian combat instructor, Commander Vex, who stalked between the rows of mixed-species cadets with predatory grace. Humans. Commander Vex rumbled, his 4 nostrils flaring with contempt. The weakest species admitted to the academy. A mistake, in my professional opinion. Lisa kept her eyes forward, face impassive. This was nothing new. Since humans had joined the Galactic Alliance 50 years ago, they had been considered the underdogs, physically weaker than most member species, with no natural defenses, and originating from a medium-gravity world that hadn't produced the dense musculature of high-G planets. What aliens often failed to understand was humanity's greatest strength: adaptability. Today we assess close-quarters combat aptitude, Commander Vex announced. Each cadet will demonstrate defensive techniques against an opponent of my choosing. Lisa felt her heart rate increase slightly. Combat assessments were always tense affairs, especially for humans who were routinely paired against physically superior species. The Academy's integration policy meant all cadets received identical training, regardless of physiological differences. When Commander Vex reached her position in the line, he paused, yellow eyes narrowing. Cadet Reed, your combat scores are inconsistent. Yes, Commander, she replied neutrally. Perhaps today we can determine if you belong here at all. He gestured to a hulking Dravak cadet. Cadet Morn, step forward. The gray-skinned Dravak moved to the center mat. At nearly 8 feet tall with a reinforced exoskeleton, he outweighed Lisa by at least 200 pounds. Lisa stepped forward without hesitation, taking her position opposite Morn. The other cadets watched silently, the non-humans with anticipation, the handful of human cadets with concern. Standard defensive protocols, Commander Vex instructed. Cadet Morn, attack at will. Morn lunged with surprising speed for his size. Lisa sidestepped, using the Dravak's momentum against him as she had been taught. The match continued for several minutes, Lisa avoiding direct confrontation while executing textbook defensive maneuvers. Enough, Commander Vex growled clearly, displeased by the lack of a decisive outcome. Inefficient and unimpressive, Cadet Reed. You avoid rather than engage. Defensive assessment requires successful defense, Commander, Lisa replied, careful to keep her tone respectful despite the unfair critique. Commander Vex's upper lip curled. Perhaps you require a more educational opponent. The training hall went silent. It was uncommon but not unprecedented for instructors to personally test cadets. What was unprecedented was an instructor challenging a human cadet known to be at a severe biological disadvantage. Center position, Cadet Reed, Commander Vex ordered, removing his uniform jacket to reveal a torso covered in natural armor plates. Lisa moved to the center mat, her mind racing through her options. Taurians were renowned for their raw strength and combat heritage. The commander outmatched her in every physical metric, every metric except one, reaction time. Lisa took her stance as the other cadets watched with growing discomfort. Even the non-human cadets recognized the mismatch. Commander, Captain Thren, another instructor who had been observing from the side, stepped forward. Perhaps, your concern is noted, Captain. Commander Vex interrupted. But this is a combat academy, not a nursery. Cadet Reed must prove her worthiness. He turned to Lisa. Defend yourself, human. The attack came with frightening speed, a disciplined strike aimed at her midsection that would likely crack ribs if it connected. But Lisa had already begun moving, her body responding with the lightning-fast reflexes that were humanity's evolutionary gift. She pivoted, letting the strike pass within millimeters of her torso. Commander Vex pressed forward with a combination of strikes, each delivered with enough force to seriously injure. Lisa evaded each one, her movements economical and precise. The commander's frustration became evident as he failed to land a single blow. The other cadets watched in growing amazement, as the small human repeatedly avoided attacks that could have incapacitated most of them. Stand and fight, Commander Vex finally roared, abandoning disciplined technique for a wild overhead strike. What happened next occurred so quickly that many cadets would later disagree about the exact sequence of events. As the commander's massive fist descended, Lisa stepped inside his guard, the opposite of what any rational cadet would do. She deflected his wrist with her left forearm, redirecting the momentum of his attack. Simultaneously, her right hand shot up to the underside of his extended arm, targeting a pressure point that existed in most bipedal species. The commander's strike faltered momentarily. Just enough for Lisa to execute a perfect leg sweep combined with a leverage throw that used the Taurian's own weight and momentum against him. 7 feet and 400 pounds of combat instructor hit the mat with a thunderous impact that shook the training hall. Before Commander Vex could process what had happened, Lisa had already retreated to a safe distance and resumed her defensive stance, breathing only slightly elevated. The silence in the hall was absolute. Captain Thren recovered. First, well-executed Cadet Reed. Textbook application of xenophysiological knowledge combined with perfect timing. Commander Vex rose slowly, his expression unreadable. The other cadets expected an explosion of rage, perhaps even an expulsion order. Instead, the Taurian straightened his uniform and regarded Lisa with new assessment in his yellow eyes. Humans, he finally said, loud enough for all to hear, are physically weaker than most Alliance species. This is fact. He rolled his shoulder, which had taken the brunt of the impact. What is also fact, and what I have just demonstrated for your educational benefit, is that strength alone does not determine combat effectiveness. Lisa maintained her position, uncertain if the ordeal was truly over. Cadet Reed correctly identified my vulnerabilities and exploited them with precision. She understood that even superior opponents have weaknesses. This is the essence of tactical thinking. He turned to address the entire class. The Academy accepts humans not as a political gesture, but because their unique attributes contribute to our collective strength. Remember this lesson. As the commander dismissed the class, the other human cadets gathered around Lisa, their expressions a mixture of awe and newfound confidence. "How did you know that would work?" one whispered. Lisa allowed herself a small smile. "Humans might not be the strongest, but we've been underdogs our entire evolutionary history. We've gotten very good at figuring out how to survive against bigger predators." Word of the incident spread quickly through the academy. By evening meal, cadets from all species were discussing how the human cadet had dropped Commander Vex before anyone could react. More importantly, something subtle had shifted in the Academy's perception of its human cadets. They weren't just diversity additions after all. They brought something unique to the Alliance, something that couldn't be measured in muscle mass or protective exoskeletons. They brought the dangerous ingenuity of a species that had evolved as both prey and predator, and had survived against all odds.